All right, by the pricking of my thumbs. This title is, most of these titles actually come right from the book. They use the book titles. So this comes from the book, and it's from Macbeth. And the line in Macbeth is, by the pricking of my thumbs, something wicked this way comes. And it's when there's a chant by the witches in Macbeth, and they're portending evil. And it's that phrase now, when you say, by the pricking of my thumbs, it's come to mean that everything around you, you're seeing signs and portents of evil and bad news coming. And that's pretty much what this episode's about. You know, you have from every direction, all of these little pieces are falling into place in this episode. It's a very plot-driven episode, but there's a lot of little things that end up erupting into this witch trial that happens in the next episode. It's a workhorse episode, I call it, and it starts a tumble of events for our couple. It kicks off with one of the most steamy scenes in the entire season, you know, with Claire's wake-up call. The people that have seen the show, Claire wake-up call, and that's quite a scene. And then when Murtaugh comes in, and you see Claire just looking content as a bug in a rug, you know, in her little post-coital glee, you know, she's sitting there all smiles and looking like cat that ate the canary, and Murtaugh just kind of looks like, I really shouldn't be here right now. This is not where I belong. It's just priceless. There was romance, humor, duels, death, legends with the changelings. There's witchcraft, there's plots, there's blackmail, and then there's a good old smack of Leary upside her face. So we have it all in this episode. And meet Sandrian, you know, which is going to, I didn't highlight him for the first season, I highlighted him for the second, but he's going to become a very important person in the life of Claire and Jamie. And he's another one that Claire should have known better than to try to play, you know, games with, because he comes across like he's you know, easily played, like he's a goofball a little bit, but he is a very, very devious, cunning, cold, you know, character, and he does not care. You know, he will sooner see you die than deal with you. Blackjack Randall doing wet work for him, taking out his enemies and all kinds of things. So, you know, he's not one to mess with. And Claire over there, all bold, you know, threatens to expose him if he doesn't, you know, help Jamie with this pardon that he's trying to get. So it's, I'm like thinking, Claire, you know, like don't do that. Don't get on his guy's radar. But you know, she doesn't ever listen. But it's funny because in that scene, you see him say, you have such a lovely neck, it holds your head so prettily. I'd hate to see them parted. You know, the line that he says to her. And so now in this season, you got two major deaths that happen in season 2, forecasted exactly how they happened, between Dougal saying, if my hand rises against you, may this dagger cut me in my heart. And you see him saying, you hold your neck so prettily, I hate to see it separated from your head. And that's how he dies, with the axe blow to the neck. So it's kind of like a little bit of prophesying going on in one season for the next. So I kind of like that, those little pieces of foreshadowing. Galus and Dougal, you see her dance in the night, and Claire gets a vision of the stone dancers while she's watching her. And that should have been a clue to the viewers that she must be a time traveler. Like you started tying it together. It starts being little clues dropped, because the next episode that's going to come out, there's something more here. And she envisions that, and it should have connected the stones to her in her mind. But they have a plot. Somebody was supposed to kill Dougal's wife, and their plot fails because while it does kill Dougal's wife and she poisons her husband, and we find out she's pregnant with Dougal's child, all that comes out. Colm also figures it out. And Colm is having no part of this witchy woman becoming any kind of mate for his brother, have any kind of hands in his clan. And so he is cutting this stuff right off. And he sends Dougal off. He sends Jamie off to be with Dougal. And Jamie knows, like, because now they have filmed this. They didn't know that scene was going to get cut. So this is in the original script. You know, he knows this man just threatened his wife, even if he was just playing a game or whatever. Like, he doesn't want to leave his wife. He says to her, you stay close to the castle. Under no circumstances go see Galis. Under no circumstances leave. It's very dangerous now. You know, he says that to her when he's leaving. But, you know, she gets a note, supposedly from Galis, I need you, come now. And she goes off and they get captured and taken away in a little paddy wagon for witches. And you have Leary sitting there grinning like the cat that ate the canary. And, you know, Claire knows that she was behind it. So it was a really a lot of plot in this episode, that episode, but it set up a lot. Devil's Mark episode is the pivot episode of the season, because this is so much happens in this episode, but it's where the truth comes out. You know what I mean? It's one of those truth episodes, and it's the apex. Remember what I told you last week that this book is shaped like 3 triangles? This is the apex of the first triangle, according to Diana's description. Every one of Claire's mistakes in judgment has come back to haunt her. You know, her mistakes with Father Bane and getting on his bad side, the changeling child that she tried to save, trusting Galis, Leary's jealousy and smacking her across the face and talking smack to her, you know, Claire upsetting Colum and by saying she knows about Hamish. All of these little elements, and her being English on top of it, is not going to help her with these superstitious Highlanders. You know, this is another Tony Graphia episode, so again, it has a lot of symbolism and it's very well written. The murmuration, they see a murmuration outside of the jail area, and that kind of represents her and Galis having to stick together and flock together to protect themselves. And you see a 3-beat conversation with them in the Thieves' Hole. First time they talk, they're pissed at each other. They're you know, angry, and you know, they don't have any use for each other. The second time they talk, they kind of bare their souls a little bit. They have a role like a lot of heart to heart, and in that talk, Claire is realizing, you know what, I love Jamie, and I'm not, you know, I don't think I'm ever going to be able. I don't know if I can leave him. You know, like now she has truly fallen for him. You know, because now that she feels like she's isolated from him, she wishes he was there. She realizes how much she's grown to love him. And we start to see a little more of Galis. If you watch that episode again, you start to see a little more of Galis' true identity more and more as this episode progresses, because her whole accent and mannerisms and colloquialisms and, you know, her whole purpose and the way that she's acting is much more 20th century. In the way that she's holding, like before, if you look at her early, she has a broader accent, but she's almost like she's putting it on to fit into the crowd, and she has a much more like way that she holds herself to fit in. Now she's talking like I'm from the 60s, you know, I'm talking to you straight up. She has her accent, but it's nowhere near as strong. It's much more muted and educated, and so she's letting her true identity show. And she's like, why are you here? Because she knows Claire's a time traveler, and she just doesn't know what her purpose is. And so in the end, when Jamie comes and rescues her, which is one of my favorite Jamie rescues of all time, is in that scene where he puts the knives out. He's like, you know, God told me to protect this woman. And he says, you know, if you think you're more important than God, then I have a problem with you. And first one forward is the first one down. That's a great line. But, you know, he's ready. He's standing there with his knives out. And all of a sudden, Galis stands up. And she had seen when they pulled Claire's arms out and pulled her dress down, Galis had seen her mark, and it gave her an idea. And that's when she did the devil's mark bit on her arm to see I carry his mark. Now the devil's mark thing was a thing they used to do for witch trials. They would strip the witches down and they would scour over their body for any odd looking marks, birthmarks, weird things that don't look normal. And if they had any kind of odd looking weird mark on their body, they would say, the devil has marked her for his service. And there's the proof, you know? And so this was a regular ritual that was done. So she referred to that and pointed to her smallpox scar and basically let Claire know, I have a smallpox scar, unlike you. But before anything could be said, they were out. And after he rescues her, that's when we get this big pivot of the season. Claire tells Jamie the truth. And this was one of the favorite moments in the book and the show. I thought they played this perfectly. Wasn't that a great scene?
It was a great scene.
It was probably one of my favorite scenes of the whole season. It's such a great scene. The way Sam plays it, that total like stunned look on his face. But now you can see below that, you can see all of the little processes going on. Like, wait a minute, that explains this. That would explain that. Like he's making all the deductions of how that's explaining things. That would explain things that didn't make any sense. He knows that she believes exactly what she's saying, whether it's totally true or not. He believes her because she believes it. You know, their walls start to crumble between them. And now it's kind of like that last veil that kept them separate is down. Then that you see another unusual sex scene. When I say unusual, I mean unusual for television to show a sex scene like this. That's what I mean. Not that they didn't think so unusual, but it's unusual to see in TV a sex scene like that. Very sexy, you know, scene. Jamie just wants to pleasure her in the scene. And in that moment, here's how I take that scene. In that moment, he knows that now that he knows that Frank's alive and he's there waiting for her, he knows this is another man's woman. I don't really have a right to her. So, and even though I've had her, now I know that, I can't just take her like I would. But I want to have one last time to see pleasure on her face and her feel love like that. And I want to remember that because he's planning on taking her back to the Stones. So he does this instead, where he doesn't take his pleasure with her, but he gives her pleasure and watches her face in the process. And I just thought, it's just such a beautiful thing, you know what I mean? It's just beautiful. He takes her to the Stones, and it kind of goes along with that saying, if you love something, set it free, and if it returns to you, it was yours, and if it doesn't, it never was, you know, that expression. So that's what he does. He takes her there. And I like the book version of what happens after that better than the show, the way the show did it. She kind of walks toward the stone. She says after she sat there for hours and hours and hours and hours trying to debate what to do. And she spent the whole day sitting there thinking. And then she got up and she started walking. She said, I'm going to get up and I'm going to start walking toward the stone. And then I'm going to turn around and walk the other way. And I'm going to see which way feels right. That's kind of what she did. And so she walked toward the stone, almost to it. She could hear it pulling her, but she was ignoring that aspect to see how it felt. And then she turned around and started walking the other way, and she just never stopped walking. She just kept walking. And she went back to where Jamie was. It was this really sweet interaction between them. And one of the things he said to her in the book was, I wish I could have fought him for you. Because he wanted to go through this. So he goes, I wish I could have fought him for you. And she laughed. And she said, you don't have to fight him for me. I chose you. And he says, yeah, I know that. I don't mean that. He says, I mean, I would have liked you not to have the guilt that you made that choice. If I would have fought him for you, it would have taken the choice away from you. And if I won, it wouldn't have been on you that you lost him. And it was like in Jamie's little way, so cute, that he's trying to save her the guilt of it and by doing something that totally takes the decision out of her hands, you know. But in his mind, like that would have been a better thing for her. Here's the inside that episode.
Into episode 111. The episode's called The Devil's Mark, which refers to the vaccination mark on Gaelus's farm, and which people at the time thought as the mark of the devil. We decided to make a bigger deal out of the vaccination mark than in the book. In the book, Claire sort of notices the vaccination mark as she's being rescued by Jamie, and then upon reflection, she realizes what that was, and what it meant, and what it implied about Gaelus potentially being a time traveler.
1968.
Dramatically for the show, it felt like that would dissipate the moment, that if she only made that realization later, looking back on it, then the sort of dramatic moment has slipped by us. When you're constructing it as a script, you sort of want these dramatic beats to happen in the moment so they have the maximum impact. This whole episode is very important for the relationship of Gaelis Duncan and Claire. You know, they've been sort of both wary of each other and realizing that each of them has a secret, and also sort of becoming friends at the same time. So it's always been a really interesting relationship. And on the deeper level, you know, you discover that they're both time travelers and they both are from the 20th century. It'll be interesting to see what happens as the story goes forward. This may or may not be the last time that we see Galis Duncan, but certainly the reverberations of what happened in this episode will continue for quite some time. I think ever since Claire arrived in the 18th century, you've been wondering if she was ever going to tell anybody, the truth. The big moment here, it's really Jamie's moment. It's really, she's going to tell him, and how does he react? And it's a great shot of Sam, and I like watching the character sort of take in that information and try to sort of, understand it and try to get settled with it. And of course, it's a pivotal moment in the entire relationship between these two characters. It's the moment when she tells him the truth and who she really is.
From the future.
I also thought it was really interesting. I always loved it in the book that his reaction is to let her go, to take her back to the Stones. If that's her home and that's where she belongs, he would give her up as much as he loves her. And it's just a lovely gesture, and it's just a heartbreaking moment, when he takes her up there and walks away and never expects to see her again. Why is that?
Okay, Lollybrock. We finally see Jamie's home and family, and Outlander has a real knack for an opening shot. On the episodes, they've had some hella opening shots. Let me just say. And this one, I love the opening shot of this episode because what it does is it has this real big sweeping aerial shot, and they do it with a drone camera. And they come down, and they come down, and they come down, and you just see all these hills and mountains and all this stuff. And as you get closer and closer, you see this little horse on the side of this mountain, and it looks real tiny with these two little people on the horse, and there's nothing else but that. Just hills and mountains with this one little lonely horse walking with them two of them on the horse. And it comes in closer, closer, and closer till you get to them, and then all of a sudden they're looking up. It's like they're looking where you just came from, basically. And they're talking about airplanes, and she's telling him about airplanes, and he's like, and they just stay up there, and he's trying to imagine all these things that she's saying, and you get the feeling that, like, everything they can talk about now. Like, there's no secrets, there's nothing that they can't share. Now, all these things she wished she could tell him, she's telling him stuff, and it's just this really nice moment. And I always tell my husband every time we see that episode that it reminds me of the opening of Sound of Music. And it's the opening of Sound of Music where you see all the overhead view, and then all of a sudden it zooms closer and closer, and then you see her twirling on the mountaintop by herself. That it reminds me of that kind of a shot, and I always loved it. Jamie's reservations, he has reservations about even going home because Dougal has told him a lot of lies about Lollybrock, about Jenny, about her children being Randall's, and that she's had to, and it's really upsetting to Jamie because he feels guilt over it. He's disturbed that she allowed that to happen on his behalf, and it's kept him away from Lollybrock, which is what Dougal's goal was to start with, was to keep them from talking, to keep him away. And the longer he can keep him away, the better chance something has happening to him, and then Dougal can try to seize the property. But Jamie believed it because he knows when he got knocked out that Randall was taking Jenny in with him, so he doesn't know any different. We see Jamie's relationship with both Jenny and Ian, and Jenny and Jamie go toe to toe with their Fraser tempers. And Ian is like the calming voice of balance and sense and reason that kind of buffers them, And Jenny is actually modeled after Diana. Diana has said, like, out of all the characters in the books, if you had to say, she says, really all of them, how she says that. But she said, if I had to pick one that is most like me, it would be Jenny, if that tells you anything. Key moments are the opening shot, Jenny recounting what happened with BJR after Jamie was knocked out, which is really an incredible scene with him putting his fingers in her mouth and all that. It's just like so creepy and invasive. Jamie telling Claire about his youth, Jamie at the mill, with the, trying to find what's stopping the mill, and then the redcoats coming, and Jamie and Claire greeting the tenants at the quarter day, and then the last scene with Jenny and Jamie at Brian's grave, that's to me one of my favorite scenes because it's just such a lovely scene. You feel like Brian's looking over his two children to see that they've made up, and I just think that's a lovely thought. This episode, up until this episode, I was 100% cool with everything on the show. I was cool with everything they did, little changes they made, etc., etc. This episode, they really started contorting Jamie in this episode. And they wanted him to appear that he was failing as a laird. They wanted him to look like he was trying too hard to fill his father's shoes and he was a failure at it. And that the show sometimes has this need to constantly make Jamie less heroic and less intelligent, like they made it where he just had a tutor instead of that he went to university. They made, like, there's a lot of little things like that, little things that kind of take him down a peg. And, Jamie's been training to do this his whole life. I mean, he worked with his father all along growing up. He went and trained, for 2 years with Dougal, another year with Colum. He went to university. Jamie's no dummy to be acting like a little child. And then they had Claire mothering him, and treating him like his mommy, which it was just very aggravating for people that were book passionate people. And you saw all these comments online saying, "Who is this person and what did you do to Jamie?" And why is Claire being his mother instead of his wife? So people were in a little bit of a roar over that. Did I play this yet? To Meet the Frasers? Okay.
Jamie has always said that he wants someday to return to Lollybrook and be the laird, declare it as his lady. Be careful what you wish for, it's not as easy as he thought.
Coming back to Lollybrook has a lot of ghosts, a lot of memories for him. He has a lot of unfinished business there with his sister.
Don't test me, brother. When Claire first encounters Jenny, she's really quite taken aback. She is a force of nature.
You shouldn't have come.
Jamie, perhaps we should go
Tell that troll to keep her name out of my business.
There's a real standoff between the two of them, and it can be quite fiery.
Do you think life just started when the two of you walked through that door?
I think a lot of Jenny and Jamie's relationship would be familiar to anybody who's either had a brother or sister. They were quite stubborn, and so when they do butt heads, there are real fireworks.
I am not out of this estate now, and I do not need to discuss the running of it with my sister.
Begging your pardon.
But they love each other so much, and that always comes through in the end, after the tempers have cooled.
She's been running the place in his absence, along with her husband Ian.
He always knew how to make an entrance.
Ian is Jamie's best friend, going a long way back. They fought together in France. That's where Ian lost his leg.
Ian views Jamie as a brother. He's absolutely delighted to see Jamie back at Lollybrook. They look out for each other. Ian will have Jamie's back.
Ian!
Jamie's really trying to find his place again, and he's trying to discover what it means to be laird. Listen to me. You're trying to be someone you're not.
He has all these ideas of who he should be, and eventually he discovers the kind of man that he really should be.
Welcome home, Laird Bloch Turret.
I'm trying to include a lot of those so that those of you that have only read the books and not seen the show get a vibe of the show a little bit, so. Okay, so episodes 13 and 14 are The Watch and The Search. Pretty much all of the damage that they did on Jamie's character in Lollybrook, it's almost like suddenly he became the White Rose and he became this fantastic character again in the next episode. We kind of get a chuckle over that because all of a sudden he is like informed Jamie, standing up, doing his thing, being a really great laird, making wise decisions. It's just like, what did he have, like a bad hair day or something the week before? But anyway, The Watch is a departure from the book. It's a pretty significant departure from the book because, the whole betrayal, you don't have Ronald McNabb betray Jamie the way he was in the book. They have this whole situation with the Watch when he gets caught up with the Watch. But it was a good episode. It was one of those things where it felt like I never mind adaptation if it fits And it feels like Diana could have wrote it this way, just as well as she wrote it the way she wrote it. It feels like it fits in her world, and the characters are on track, and people are on track. You feel like, I can live with that. That's fun when they do that, because, you know, as long as you know my characters right. Really, anybody that knows me, if you know me on Outlander Class when I talk, if the characters are good, I'm good. You know, like that's my big complaint when they make the characters like foreign and I don't know who these people are. But if you're doing that right and you're making it a scene and it's working better and you're kind of showing a different element that maybe wasn't shown as much in the book, I'm okay with that. You know, as long as it's done well, and I could imagine it could have been in the book, and I could have imagined that for the watch. So I thought the watch was a good episode. It has some really poignant moments in it as well when Jenny has her baby, and Claire has to help her with the baby. And then that triggers Claire to realize, remember that her and Frank had been trying to have a baby for a long time and hadn't been successful, and she thought it was her. At one point, they had money, they were getting blackmailed by Horrocks. Horrocks ends up showing up with the watch and blackmailing Jamie. And Jamie only had this money, but it was set aside for his children. And he tells Claire, this is supposed to be for our children. And she starts to tell him how, you know, she never told him this because she wasn't planning on staying with him. She didn't think it was important, but she doesn't think she can have children. And she was like crying a little bit. And you could tell, I mean, I thought this was played so beautifully because you could tell in Jamie's face, it matters to him, you know, like he played that look like he's upset and kind of threw him for a loop, but at the same time, I got to be strong for her, so I'm going to hold myself together, you know? And so he tried to act like, you know, well, you know what, it's okay because I wouldn't want you to be in danger or in pain. Seeing you in pain hurts me, you know? So he kind of, you know, played it off to make her think it didn't bother him that much. But then after she walked out the room, you see him sit on the chair and he kind of slumps like, wow, you know, like I have to mentally prepare. I'm not going to have children. Like that was a big thing to him. So it was really a very poignant scene. Here's the preview for the watch, I think this is.
I hope you kept your powder dry. Well, there's only one way to find out.
You pay one devil to protect you from another.
You two lads know each other.
You won't stay quiet for long.
You daft, welcoming the watch into our home.
Whatever happens, we'll handle it.
What about the price on my head? There's no way out.
It's kind of an idea too that this guy Macquarie could have been what Jamie would become, and that's also another idea they kind of get across in the show when you look at the behind the scenes. Macquarie is kind of a lot like Jamie, only he's an outlaw. He's part of the watch, and so it's kind of to be if Jamie had continued on the path he was on, this is where he would have ended up. In the search, everyone has their episode in every season that is their down episode, and or the one that they could like take or leave. And for the season 1, it's usually the search is the one that people aren't crazy about. It's kind of has like a lot of boring parts to it, but there's 3 big spots that I like, and one is with Claire and Murtaugh in the cave, and they kind of bond and they become close in this scene. Then there's one with Dougal and Claire where he basically tries to blackmail her he tells her that Jamie's been arrested, and he tries to blackmail her into marrying him. And they have like a tiff between them. She basically calls him on himself and everything he's been doing to manipulate Jamie. And it's a really good scene. And then there's a scene when they first embark and you see Claire and Jenny playing good cop, bad cop with the red coat officer. So I'm going to skip all this other stuff and I'm going to show you that.
What have you done with the other prisoner?
I'll not let a harlot talk to me that way. Untie me straight away.
A harlot am I now?
Only a slut would stoop to rob a king's man.
We are not harlots or thieves. We just want to know where the Highlander is. The red-coated one.
Go to the devil, the both of you.
You don't have to make this more difficult. A simple answer and we'll be on our way. I don't think you grasp the situation you're in. I won't be able to stop her once she sets her mind to something.
You don't mess with Jenny. Jenny from the block. Call that. All right, so now we're down to the finale 2 episodes, and I'm not going to talk much of this because I have a video or 2 I want to share with you, and I want to get it in. But they're packed with a lot of messianic and sacrificial type of themes for both Jamie and Claire. Because first you see Jamie do it for Claire, and then you see Claire do it for Jamie. And together they're the last 2 emotional climaxes. Claire's rescue of Jamie and Claire's help to heal Jamie's damage to his soul. And you also, because they had the same director that directed the wedding, also directed these episodes, she put into their scenes a lot of callbacks to the wedding. Like, for instance, when Tobias does that walk around Jamie, he says, will you let me see your back? And he walks around him to look at him and all. It's kind of like a cue, like when Claire did it on their wedding night, to walk around and look at his back in like this lovey way. And then when you see that where he's far up, and you see him want to touch his back like that, that's a callback to the wedding night. So there's like a couple little elements in there. This is inside the Wentworth episode, which is episode 15.
The key thing in this episode is Blackjack's desire to obtain Jamie's surrender before he's executed. This sort of goes all the way back to the beginning of their relationship when Jack first captured Jamie and took him to Fort William several years ago. And at that point, the key struggle between the 2 men was whether or not Jack was going to break Jamie.
Are you scared?
And at that time, you saw that Jamie didn't break.
I'm just afraid I'll freeze stiff for you, man.
And that sort of stuck with Jack all through these years, that he was unable to break this young man. So now he comes upon him in Wentworth Prison in 115 and has an opportunity to revisit that history, and is determined that before this young man dies, he is going to get what he was denied back at Fort William, which is Jamie's surrender. I think Jack's, sexual interest in Jamie is definitely rooted in ideas of power and struggle. It's about domination, it's about getting surrender, it's about imposing himself in a way that causes maximum distress.
Are you watching?
So there's some part of Jack that likes being the predator. Somehow that gives Jack his pleasure.
Admit that even now, you're terrified.
We gave more rehearsal time to the actors so that there was more time to go through what are incredibly intense and sensitive scenes, and we wanted them to be able to find the truth in all these scenes, sort of really dig deep and go to places that people aren't naturally akin to go to. So it was just all about giving them time and space to really work through it. There was a fearless quality, I think, on the part of both actors, that they were willing to go.
So I began.
They were able to sort of play, and they were able to sort of find the richness in the moments.
I think that Tobias and Sam should have got all the Emmys.
I agree with that.
I mean, honest to God, they did the most incredible, and the thing is, it's not something you really see on television. So, I mean, they were just so good. And even Claire, when she has this next scene I'm going to show with Claire, she's just so good. I mean, the 3 of them were so good. And I think you saw that the payoff of having that extra time. But this, to me, is like the pivotal scene.
I cannot be your husband any longer. And I will not be less to you.
You did what was necessary to survive, that's all.
No, he broke me. He broke me, Claire. He knew it, we both did.
You belong to no one else but me. And I belong to you. And nothing will ever change that.
Those are just weak words, Claire. Dad. God. I lie here, feeling I will die without your touch, but when you do touch me, I want to vomit with shame.
No, you're my husband, James Fraser. How dare you give up on me now? You swore to me, you promised me the protection of your body.
You need me. Miranda had your body.
I'll be damned if he has your soul as well. You're mine. And we are meant to be together. The only explanation I have for all this is the only my mind around what's happened all these past months. It's all been for you and me. If you take away the one last thing that makes sense to me, and I will die with you right here now.
Nina. How can you have me like this?
I will have you any way I can. Always.
Oh, can we get a collective oh? Okay, this last video, this is Sam talking about the last two scenes.
But for me, it was certainly about sort of three main points, and it was basically, you know, the sort of the torture of Jamie, the sort of physically side, then the rape, which is obviously, you know, another side, but then it was about recalculating Jamie, about breaking his mind, and I think for Jamie, you know, these horrific things that happen to him, the physical side, he can kind of deal with, but it's, as you mentioned yourself, you know, it's the moment that he betrays Claire. In his mind, he betrays her because he feels guilt about it, and he found a moment of happiness, well, not happiness, of pleasure, and that just shows you how sort of depraved Blackjack is, that he managed to find, you know, Jamie's fortitude and his strength in his mind, and to find that nugget of it and to break that, and that's, you know, that's what's really interesting, that Jamie is this strong character, but yet he's broken sort of completely.
Well, we see that element of his personality in a lot of ways, right? Here's a soldier who the ladies love, but he's a virgin on his wedding night. I mean, he's this tough guy who's very sensitive and caring. I mean, when Jamie first hears the story from Claire about this preposterous thing of coming from the future, he accepts it. He believes it. There's a kind of goodness and a trust in this man, isn't there?
There is, yeah. I mean, that's a huge moment, because he finds out that she's from the future, and it's a huge thing for anyone. But ultimately, he knows that she's hiding a secret, and he trusts her. He says his words are, "I trust your word." Whether or not he can encompass all of that and understand exactly what that means about coming from the future, and all the repercussions of that, ultimately, he knows she's telling the truth. And he's willing to go with that, and I think that's very much the mark of Jamie, that he is a man of his word, and in that time, in that period, you know, someone's word was ultimate. You know, if you said something and you were going to do something, then that was it. And yeah, whether or not he can quite grasp what airplanes are and what the future looks like is another thing. But for that very moment, he's willing to believe her and to support her.
And why does Jack hate Jamie so much? I asked Tobias this the other day, and his answer was that he said that Jamie, in his mind, in Tobias's mind, represents something that he cannot be, etc. What do you think that is? He didn't define what it is, but he said that's the basis of it. Can you pick it up from there?
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't hate Jamie at all. I think he's maybe obsessed with Jamie. I think, I mean, not to go too much into Jack Randall's character, but he's a man that's lost himself. He's a man that's been through a period and a war and countless sort of terrifying things that have happened to him. I imagine that he's lost his sense of maybe self or humanity. And I think in Jamie, he sees someone that has a resilience and a strength, and So for the sadist that Blackjack Randall is, I think that, you know, that that's his exploration in humanity and in who this character is. Who is this person before him that that won't break, that won't give up? And for Jamie, yeah, it's like this bond, it's sort of bond in blood, that he has all this history with Blackjack Randall, with what happened to his sister, with the death of his father. Jamie feels guilt about all that, and it's just this sort of epic three-way battle, really. That's it's magnificent and great fun to play.
Hi everyone, the next thing you see here is I went to break and I put up the season 1 adaptation hits and misses, my own opinion of the hits and misses of the season for adaptation choices. And I left it up over the break, and we all kind of informally talked about it over the break, but I wanted to read through the list because we didn't actually do that. I just left it up there and nobody took their break, and we all ended up just talking about what we liked and didn't like and why and so forth. So I'm going to let that play for you, but I want to read through the list. First, we have the addition of Rupert and Angus as a comedy team. I thought they were fantastic and hilarious, and it was a great visual way to add that comedy team element. As soon as you saw them, you knew hilarity was going to ensue. The consolidation of Alec and Murtaugh's character into one stronger character. Alec was still there, but a lot of his lines went to Murtaugh to make Murtaugh a little more solid. And I thought this was when they made the right choices with Murtaugh without letting him take over. Season 1's expansion of his role was just perfect enough. The addition of the wool walking scene. This was a great slice of culture that they were able to add with real wool walkers that they included as part of that scene. It gave you a real slice of the culture and the vibe of the time. And Garrison Commander expansion. I thought this was a great idea to expand this scene to give people a idea about BJR's character a little more. You see a lot of these elements kind of spliced and hinted throughout the book. This kind of consolidated it into one performance that really hit it home for you, what he's about. And I thought that was a good choice for adaptation. The restructure of the wedding episode, I thought the way they did it with the humor blended with the love and the way they went back and forth and showed you in flashback, fast forward. I thought that was a great way to do that episode. So I really liked the way they did the wedding episode. The early montage of Claire's background. I thought this was a great choice by the show to kind of consolidate all in a nutshell in a visual bang, bang, bang way. You know, what Claire's about and where we meet her on her road of life. And it was, you know, a lot of great visuals put together that way. I thought it was a good idea. Letting Diana do a cameo in The Gathering. I thought this was a wise choice by the show because a lot of the initial fans that came to the show were book fans. And so doing that was a great way to put an Easter egg in there for them and to get them excited and pumped for the show. It was a good homage to herself as well. The controversial choice of adding a lot of the Frank back. Some people didn't like that. They thought they shouldn't have spent the time for it. I thought it was a great idea. I thought that I agreed with Ron that if you don't understand what she missed, or what she lost, or why she cared to go back, it makes her choice important. It gives her choice weight. Because she is making a choice. She is taking a loss of something that she does love. So you had to believe that and understand that. Plus, I think people shortchanged Frank's character. I think it's more important we know him than people act like it is, because he really is throughout the entire series. We get more pieces of Frank. Even in the new book, Bees to Come, we're going to get more pieces of Frank. So I was fine with that choice. And I thought they stayed in his character as opposed to what they did in season 3 with his character. Giving us Jamie's POV in episode 9. Very good choice by the show to do a pivot there, and also to add in his POV to show that he is now just as much of an important character to the show that Claire is. And now it's going to be their story and not just her story. So I thought that was a good choice and a way to do that. The misses for season 1 included the choice in the finale to reconstruct the logistics into a shorter time period so they could just sail away to France in the final shot of season 2. The show felt compelled to carry over all the healing because they changed the timing of the finale. And this changed the entire tone of the first half of season 2. And, losing the grotto scene, or just all of it, really hurt the next season. And I talk a little bit about that in the break. I'm going to let you guys hear what we talked about in the break. The decision to include Leary at the trial and Jamie knowing that she was behind what happened to Claire, it caused a reverberation of problems for seasons 2 and 3. And because in reality, Jamie would have never married her had he known that she was behind Claire's arrest and near death. But they wanted to make drama for that season, and it caused problems for later seasons. So I was not down with that choice. Changing Jamie and Lollybrock to make him a flawed buffoon, another bad choice I didn't like. Changing the ring from the thistle engraved ring to the Lollybrock ring. There was such a kerfuffle that they ended up having to contrive the correct ring to make an appearance in season 4. That was one of those things where it was, wouldn't it be interesting if? No, it wouldn't. Usually when they think that, it's not interesting. Losing most of the interaction between Claire and Father Ansem. This gives you a lot of Claire's character. I talk about that in this break time, so I won't go into it much here. And also losing the secrets not lies line on the wedding night. This was an important piece of dialogue that happened on the wedding night, and putting it instead at the Stones didn't really make a lot of sense to me. I think they should have left it where it was. And so with that, I'm going to let you hear what we talked about in the break and the way it went down, but that's basically the screen that they're all looking at.
I'm going to leave this last slide of season 1 up here that has all my hits and misses that I saw from season 1. And you guys can just take a look at it. Can you read it? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I was going to get this done as a printout. I should have. Maybe I'll do that for next week. Would you want me to do that? Yeah. Do like a handout? Yeah, these are like just an adaptation. Now this is my own opinion. You know what I mean? I'll give you that caveat. It's my own opinion, and it's what I see as the hits and misses of the season 1. And I actually have more hits for season 1 than I probably do for. Definitely do for season 2.
In the book, the scene between Claire and Father at the convent when Jamie was.
Yeah, I think I have that.
Out. They just changed it.
I think I put losing most of the interaction between Claire and Father Ansem.
Right. I thought that was beautiful in the book.
Yes, it was. And you know what's funny? Is anyone here an Outlander cast person? Okay, you guys are? Okay. How you doing? Good. So my person from Connecticut coming. Yeah. But in Outlander cast, it's a husband and wife team that run it, and you guys are not taking your break. It's their husband and wife team that runs it, and the husband hasn't read the books, and the wife has read the books, and he's very, Blake can be very, like, he has kind of a little grudginess sometimes against the book people. And he finally, this past year, read book 1, and we had like this Blake read-along club, and we were all reading to see his reaction to the book. And it was so funny because when he got to that part, he's like, I can't believe they cut so much of this out. There's so much poignant character stuff. And I was just like, for him to say that was a big deal because he doesn't ever like say the show missed anything. You know what I'm saying? When it comes to compared to the book. So. And he says, there's really a lot of interesting stuff about Claire in there, and they really cut all that out. Mm-hmm. And I said, that's all part of how they kind of wrecked the finale a little, because what they did, the biggest thing I would say in this, the biggest problem is how they did the finale because Ron was so hyped on wanting to have that last shot be them sailing off to France, mm-hmm. and that became his entire focus of life. That all this stuff that's supposed to happen in France before season 2 starts didn't get to happen. And so they felt like he had to have more healing time. And so they ended up sucking up all of season 2, the first part of season 2, with him being depressed and them being apart and all this strain, and they don't have a sex life and all. And we're just sitting there going like this, the book fans are going, oh my God, because we know, like, once they go to war, they're not going to have a lot of sex. They're not going to have a lot of time to be intimate. This was their time. You know what I mean? It was when they were in France. This was their fun time. This was where you start to really love them as a couple, and they really developed their marriage. And it was like all of that got wiped for this. And we got like 1 or 2 episodes of it before it just killed that whole aspect. And the thing about it is, that marriage, and then the time at Lollybrock, which they also killed, those 2 things are crucial to make you understand what was lost. If you don't show how beautiful it was and how wonderful it was in their marriage, and then you don't show like the life that they have for 8, 9, 10 months at Lollybrock, it makes it look like they were there for like a week. And the way it's done in the show. But she's really integrated. When you read the book, she's very integrated there. That becomes her home. She treats all the people that live there. She becomes really ingrained with the daily life. They all sit around and talk, her and Ian and Jenny. They have little funny stories they all tell you. I mean, that was her home for a long time. And they kind of just went right past it because it wasn't high conflict, nothing's happening. Like, that's the way they look at it. But it's important because all of these things is what she lost. And you can't really sympathize with what she lost until you see it. And that's what I don't think they get. Like, you got to have a foundation sometimes, in order to appreciate what's going. You have to appreciate that it was there to start with. And that's sometimes you got to pay into it. That's one of the things that they did wrong with Roger and Bree, too. They didn't pay into that enough. And so people were like, I don't even care if Roger and Bree are together. Like, I was just sitting there freaking out when I'm talking to them. I'm like, and I spent half of my posts, ask the people in the Outlander cast that are here, half of my posts were defending Roger. And I'm like, I should not be having to defend Roger. If this show is doing things right, I wouldn't be in a position to be defending Roger. It shouldn't be that way. Roger's like so lovable. How do you not love Roger? But, what do you do? Are you ready to rock and roll? You guys didn't move and circulate. Okay. DIA, the themes and structure. DIA is Dragonfly and Amber. Now, when I do these themes and structures, you guys can see, right? I do these themes and structures, so I was going to leave it like this until I start showing video things. Is that okay? Can everybody see? Okay. That's more book related. Just so you know how I'm doing this. It's more book related up front, and then when I get into the seasons and the episodes, that's more TV related. So I'm trying to give everybody a little something. So the themes and structure. The structure of Dragonfly and Amber, book 2, is a dumbbell. Okay. And what it is the framing story is like the end caps on it. And then you have the first arc of the main story, which is all the stuff in France, okay? And then you have a flat period of like contentment and peace and joy and like fun, relaxed time, like Ridge time would be, at Lollybrock. That happens for a little while, stretch in between. Then you have the second big arc of the stuff with the war and the rising, and then the final cap of the final framing element. So it's all very symmetrical like that. Framing element, first big major elements of activity, a little stretch of calm, another big stretch of activity, and then the end cap of the other framing part of the story. Now the framing story, which is 1968, forms the caps on this dumbbell. And it's all very symmetrical, and that's the idea behind this book. It's very symmetrical. And once she got that in her head, Diana being the scientist that she is, she sticks like, okay, I'm going to make everything symmetrical, and she does it all the way down the line. So the overarching focal theme of the book is marriage. And of course, it's the development and growth of Jamie Claire's marriage, but along the way, it looks at a lot of other pairings and how they function as marriages, and why different marriages take place, and the different types of what they are, and how they compare to others. And so you see that with these other ones that are, I'm not going to read them all, but Mary Hawkins and their arranged marriage to the wordy Comte, the loveless, pragmatic marriages of the French court, and how they compare to the kind of marriage that Jamie and Claire have, the doomed love of Mary and Alex, and then the pragmatic marriage of her and Jack. And then you see Jenny and Ian, which you don't see much in this show, but in the book you see a lot of their marriage and how they have their own little way of communicating. They only have their sex play that you find out about, and just kind of the way they communicate and function with him being a cripple, and how Jenny does things to kind of make that easier for him and make him feel more of a man. And she challenges, Jamie to tell him to come with them, even though he really can't, so that he feels like he would want him to. And just these different little elements that they understand each other so well now to feed that marriage. So you see all these different bond pairings, in this book. And you see all the threats to them and how they sustain the marriage. The secondary themes are honor, loyalty, and sacrifice. And that honor, loyalty, and sacrifice to love, country, and for your future. That's the secondary themes in this. The dragonfly and amber symbol, this is per DG, Vienna, is a symbol of Jamie and Claire's marriage. It is a metaphor for something of great beauty that is preserved and exists out of its proper time. So that's the meaning of dragonfly and amber as pertains into this book. A couple of messages that she wants to resonate through the story, in this story, with the framing device as well, is that while you can't change the past, you're always impacting the future. So in that sense, the choices they made impacted the future. She had Brianna and all that other stuff. But to go back and try to change something that she knows is in the past, you can't change the past. So that's how, they wanted that message out. And also, that written history is not always reliable. Sometimes it's slanted for a purpose. Sometimes it's a country that writes up a story of a battle that wants to make that country look like the victors in that battle. It makes them look strong in the battle. And they're not going to include elements that make them look weaker, Same thing now, we find out they relied on that history that Blackjack Randall was Frank's ancestor, because they intended that to be history so that he would get this pension. But it's not the truth, So sometimes history can be unreliable when it comes to being able to count on it. And there she starts to learn that lesson in these books. And you see Diana continually show that lesson in her books. The framing device. Now, I actually talked to Diana about this past week, actually. Because I told her, I said, I'm going to be doing a whole section on your framing device in this story, and I wanted to pick your brain a little on what you meant with it. So some of this is coming right from her. Some of it's what I said, and she said, yeah, you're right. So I wrote what I said, and then I added the stuff she said. So this is kind of coming right from her. Anyway, people have a mixed reaction to the framing device. There's some people that say when they opened their book and they saw that Claire was in 1968 with a grown daughter and there's no Jamie. She picked her book up and she threw it across the room and it hit the wall and the floor, and then she walked away from it and wouldn't pick it up again for 4 months. And I'm like, oh, okay, so some people react badly, to it. I personally think it was a brilliant move for this book. And here's why. Because the reader does not know the life and fate ahead for Claire when she doesn't know. You're kind of in her position. You're in her position, and you know that her fate is already, what's going to happen to her. And she doesn't know she's going through that process. All she knows is what she thinks history says, and they're trying to change history. As the reader, she doesn't change history, and that the path that she is on is going to make her be separated from Jamie for 20 years and have to raise their child without him. And you're reading every little thing they're doing with this sword of Damocles hanging over your head, and knowing every step she's doing is taking her closer to that point. You see it crumbling and crumbling and crumbling, and you want to say, go to someplace, go to America, the hell with this, you're going to be separated. But you can't do anything. And that feeling is the same feeling Claire has in trying to cope with changing things. And as she sees it crumbling, she sees that it's not changing. But the thing is, by doing this framing device, it puts you in a situation of something you care about. We don't really care as much about the rising. I mean, we care about it, but it doesn't mean something to our heart. But Jamie and Claire's relationship means something to our heart. So therefore, we are so invested in it. The thing that's going to damage that is going to matter to us, just like damage to not getting what they want with Culloden is going to matter to them. And so it puts us right in line with that feeling of doom that's hanging over them in this whole story, you know? So it was really a very clever thing. And that's the part I thought. And she's like, yeah, then there's more. That's when she laid out all her like things to me. I was like, oh, okay, I'll include it in my class. She says, it subtly shows that even though you can't change the past, you always change and impact the future, whether it's intentional or not. And she said, Brianna is a good example of that. It also allowed a way to introduce future key characters in a very short, vibrant, resonant way, because she's getting a revelation with those characters, so you're going to remember those characters, and it's going to stick with you a little bit. She said, so that's that was another reason why. Also, it created perfect symmetry and geometric pattern. Can you tell I'm doing Diana's words now? Perfect symmetry and geometric pattern. They get a quest and a revelation on both sides of the framing device. They start out with a quest to find Jamie's 30 men. They get a revelation that Jamie is Bree. They find the grave, and she tells Bree, I was married to him and he's your father. That's the revelation. In the end, they get a revelation that Galus is Roger's ancestor. And they go on a quest to find her, and then that leads to a final quest going into the next book to find Jamie, because he didn't really die Culloden. So it's all balanced with a quest and a purpose and a quest and an answer that they answer, and then that answer they get another quest. So, and a revelation. And they also find out ancestry on both sides of the frame. One side, you find out Brianna's ancestry, and the other side, you find out Roger's ancestry. As far as the rule of three, one opening question leads to another closing question. That happens. And the rule of three, which is, Diana's big on the rule of three, is you have three orphans, which is Claire, Bree, and Roger, each looking for home and family, each starting in one place and ending in another consciously. And they are a different place, but they share the journey to get there. And you have three time travelers that discover this shared ability by the end of the book. And it sets up a future bigger quest. And in keeping with the dumbbell pattern, you have three orphans in the front, three orphans in the back, and then you discover one orphan in the middle with Fergus. So that's kind of how the frame narrative works in the book. Now the show changed that because the show made it start when she got back. They started the frame in 1948. So you didn't have that balanced frame. You didn't have the sense that she had to spend 20 years there. For all you know, if you were just watching the show, she's there 6 months, turns around, and goes back. You don't know she spends 20 years there. That's a bigger no, That's a bigger sense of, holy moly, like you're going to lose 20 years together. You don't realize that watching the show. So I don't know. I kind of like it because you got all the Frank stuff, and you got all of this. You got to watch and see her return and how that went down, and her being afraid of noises, and you got to see a lot of that nitty gritty stuff. But at the same time, there's certain elements I missed. That idea of, well, all this path you're doing, 20 years apart, these people are going to be, and it's a little bit heavy and shocking. This is I told you I was doing a video from Julia Leblanc, and this one is perfect to get that idea that I was telling you about that doom effect that's over season 2, and it's a really good overview of season 2. So I hope you like this one.
My sins are all I have left. But must I bear everyone's weakness? May I not have my own?
Dear God, I hope you got the letter, and I pray you can make it better. starving on their feet, 'cause they don't get enough to eat from God. I can't believe in you. Dear God, sorry to disturb you, but I feel that I should be heard loud and clear. We all need a big reduction in amount of tears. And all the people that you made in your image, see them fighting in the street, 'cause they can't make opinions meet about God. I can't believe in you.
Be my advocate for rebellion, for your prince, for the rightful king, and for the God that sits in judgment of us all.
Dear God, I don't know if you noticed, but your name is on a lot of quotes in this book. And this crazy humans wrote it, you should take a look. And all the people that you made in your image still believing that junk is true. Well, I know it ain't, and so do you, dear God. I can't believe in. I don't believe in. Jamie!
Okay, everything is new. One of the biggest challenges to adapt this series, especially in the first 4 seasons, is that the story travels. And Diana's philosophy is that she doesn't like to tell the same story twice. You know, it makes TV adaptation very difficult because there's no standing sets, there's no standing costumes, they're in new places every season, and everything has to be done new. So they have to create a new world. Some of them also was the Skyboat song got a retreatment. It actually got 2 retreatments for season 2 because it was 2 such separate seasons. The first half had a very Baroque French music style in the credits. They actually sing the song in French. And in the back half, you had a very military battle vibe to the song for the war. Season 2 also touched on the 40s and on the 60s and in the 1740s, and as well as 1740s French and 1740s Scotland. So there was quite a bit of palette they needed to cover,
and design and so forth. There was a lot of work. And in the costumes, some of the more notable costumes, where if you go online, you can really look at them. Master Raymond is notable. All the Claire's costumes, which are interesting because they reflect the 20th century in the way that they're designed, because it was she would have done that, you know. And Jamie's always wearing some form of black or gray in season 2 because he's kind of feeling black. He's feeling dark, you know, because of how all that happened to him. The notable sets are the Star Chamber, the Apothecary of Paris apartment, and the King's bedroom. Those are like really stellar sets, and they have like a lot of rich detail. And as a matter of fact, costumes and the costumes and sets, those two people, John Gary Steele and Terry Bradshaw, they got nominated. I think they got Emmys actually, if I'm not mistaken, that year. The characters are Master Raymond. These are the two that are time traveler people that are new. Master Raymond is an empathic healer, an apothecary, and he's a prehistoric time traveler. He has a very mysterious background, multiple language, and they believe him to be in the center of occult activities. There's theory that he may be of another race, maybe one of the old ones, maybe a fairy folk, maybe something like that. He's like something other, you know. And they think he was born like in 3000 to 4000 BC, is what Diana says. He was a powerful shaman at that time. And all of the time travelers that we've met so far, at least, come from him. He's up their line of descendancy. So, you don't know all this in book 2. I mean, you only really know it because she has said it on her site, but that's out there, you know, and she's planning on writing a book. She's actually planning on writing a couple books on the Raymond story, telling his story. He's very kind, easy to speak with, and he's a friend to Claire, has very sly humor. He ends up saving Claire's life. He sees auras very clearly in different shades depending on how your powers manifest. And for Jamie, he sees red because he's a warrior, and he has a fear of Jamie because of that, because he had a bad experience with a Viking warrior in the past, which Jamie's descended from. So he has a little bit of fear about Jamie. Comte Saint-Germain is also a mysterious character and a member of the French court. He's an alchemist, and he's involved in occult activities in the novels. He's especially ruthless, dangerous. He's also charming and a merchant. He's charming with the ladies. And he will use dark arts to seek revenge on enemies. He poisoned Claire in the book. He also has a time travel gene. He had an affair with Gaylis in France, and she was going under the name Melisande Robichaud. There are theories out there that he is actually Gaylis's ancestor, but we'll see how that goes. He's also based on a real character, Saint-Germain, and this character was an alchemist, a healer, a philosopher. He was very proficient in the arts. He had always had mysterious origins and aliases, and he claimed to discover the elixir of life, and that it gave him immortality. And so he would say that he was, hundreds of years old, and then if you look through time, all of a sudden he appeared, and somebody that said they were the Comte Saint-Germain appeared in different places, basically saying he was this guy, and he would amaze and charm women with his claims of mastery over nature. So, it really kind of lent itself to be a time traveler, this guy. So Diana just picked that story up and stuck it in her story, which I love. Here's Frank Randall's true ancestors, Mary Hawkins and Alex Randall. She's an English aristocrat and goddaughter to the Duke. Starts out as a shy, stuttering 15-year-old, nurses with Claire, falls in love with Alex. Once she gets raped, she's tainted, and they terminate her arranged marriage with the Vicomte. She gains a lot of courage over the course of the book and the show, And when a marriage is arranged between she and a wealthy Jew, she escapes with Claire and Jamie. And she goes to find Alex, who's now very sick, becomes pregnant, and to save her name and give their baby child a future after he dies, Alex asks Jack to marry her, which explains the real history of Frank's perceived heritage. Alex is Jack Randall's younger brother. He's very kind-hearted, and he's a cleric. And both he and Jack had a fallout with their older brother, William, which has created a long-time bond between he and Jack. And Alex is the one person that Jack truly loves on this earth. And it's the one person that he's had an emotional connection with. When Alex falls ill with fatal consumption, Jack and Mary provide care for him, and Jack strikes a bargain with Claire to trade information for her healing services. Jack dearly loves Mary and begs his brother to marry her and protect her and his child when he's gone. And Alex's death devastates Jack. Now, I think had Jack lived much longer after this, he would have been like 10 times worse than what he was even before, if that's possible, because I think this was his last little fragment of humanity, was his relationship with his brother. The one place he felt was good in him still was loving his brother. And I think that would have just tipped him right over the edge of, if there is more of an edge, he would have fell over it, you know. So, then these are the royals: Prince Charlie Stewart, Bonnie Prince Charlie, and King Louis. And you can just read the description there of those two. King Louis was known as Louis the Beloved, and he was known to have a lot of desire for women, lover of astronomy, fascinations. He had his little pet zoo, he had his little lingerie, when you remember that. So he had like all of these little fascinations, and he gaining his support was critical for the Stuarts. And Claire and Jamie decide that if they can stop him from getting the French support, they can stop the rising. So support was granted, but it was too late, and that's where the rumored French gold comes into play that was never found and they didn't have. And the culture fostered by the nobility and decadent of Louis and his court eventually led to financial troubles, and it was the birth pains of the French Revolution. So that's them. And then we have Fergus and Louise. And Fergus is a French orphan pickpocket. He spent his first 8 years living under the stairs of a brothel, and he believes his mother was one of the whores, and he doesn't know which one it is. There are a lot of theories about his parentage. You know, there's belief out there that he might be the Comte's son, that the Comte might be his father, but that's kind of still in the air. You know, that theory is bouncing around. He was hired by Jamie to assist in spy activities, stealing letters, and he becomes the adopted son of Jamie and Claire. And although it's not really played in the show, because of course that wouldn't be PC to play in the show again, but Fergus has occasionally had to be a child prostitute as part of his stay at the brothel. And so when he gets raped by Blackjack Randall, he feels like, why didn't I just keep my mouth shut? I've done that before. That's when Claire finds out the life he had there, and she's like stunned. He's a bit of a rascal, haughty, sees himself as worldly and an expert in the ways of women and love. And he loves to challenge authority, idolizes Jamie. And then, you know, he loses his hand. And Louise is and I wanted to show you this. This is the last thing anyway. Louise, this is Louise, the real Louise de Rohan. She was a real person and really had an affair with Bonnie Prince Charlie and really had his illegitimate son. So, and I thought, looking at these two pictures together, like they actually cast her pretty darn good, didn't they? I mean, it looks like her. So I thought that was neat. I wanted to show you guys that. And then we have these.
My recording on this class ended just a wee bit early, and it didn't get in when I said about this slide, so I just wanted to go over it real quick. The next installment will start going into the actual episodes of season 2. But this is the last thing I want to talk about here. The Duke of Sandringham, I didn't really go over him in season 1 because he really comes into his full deviousness of character in season 2 and much more of a highlight in season 2. So I put his character assessment here. He's an English aristocrat. He's a duke, actually. He has very clouded political leanings. His allegiances, he plays very close to the vest, so you never really know what he's playing for, because he's double dealing and so forth. Jack Randall is in his secret employ, and Alex Randall starts off as his secretary. He's gay with an affection for young man. He had a thing for Jamie when Jamie was a teen at Leoc. He's extremely cunning, and he uses his voice to throw people off, make people think that he's stupid or silly, but he's really extremely devious and cunning. History recorded his death had mysterious circumstances. We learn about those in this season. And he orchestrated the attack on Mary and Claire because he wanted Jamie and Claire out of the picture. Because first of all, he doesn't know their true leanings, and second, he can't really control them. He wrote a German music code letter to Bonnie Prince Charlie to offer £10,000 upon landing in London for his cause. And Mother Hildegard, who is our next character here, uncovered that and helped them figure it out. She's the nun in charge of running the hospital that Claire works at. And she's the goddaughter of Louis the Sun King. She's a musical prodigy since childhood, and she has a dog, Bhutan, who diagnoses disease. She's a real force to be reckoned with and quite a character.